Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the Creator Economy for B2B. Hello and welcome today to Not Just Ads, the Creator Economy for B2B. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Veronica French. Veronica has a wealth of experience in demand generation, in particular in B2B. She's led a number of roles across a number of different SaaS brands. Currently, she leads marketing at Invert, which she's based out of Austin, US. And I'm really delighted to have her on the show today, where we're going to be discussing in detail go-to-market strategies, among a number of other things as well. So, Veronica, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Great. Maybe we could walk back in terms of you've quite a broad experience, but maybe you could just tell me in terms of how did you get into marketing, and you could maybe just tell us like what kind of motivated you, what drew you to it in the first place.
Yeah. I love hearing different folks' stories, how they get into marketing, because a lot of times you don't necessarily study it in college. Like I studied sociology. I knew I wasn't going to be a sociologist, but I fell into marketing through actually journalism. So my passion was writing and journalism. I interned at various magazines during college, and after college, my first job was with one of those magazines. And as part of leading their online content, I had to learn everything about website, SEO, social media, email marketing, and just all these different marketing tactics to get our readership growing. And through that, I developed a passion for marketing, and it spun off from there. Started more in a little bit of B2C, and then just B2B became the thing I spun into, and now more B2B enterprise marketing.
Yeah. Right, interesting. I guess, though, there's a lot of crossover, though, in terms of the experience you learned around journalism. There's a direct correlation there between like that and kind of good copywriting for B2B, I would say.
Yes, definitely. I think at the core of any good marketing is storytelling. And a lot of times in B2B, we can get very dry or speaking corporate speak. And at the end of the day, we're selling to humans and we're trying to bring them along in our journey, especially as a startup. You're really trying to sell them on a vision and on the people behind it. You're not just some like blanket corporate brand behind a website. You're human beings and you're selling to human beings. So I think storytelling, journalism becomes the backbone of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's to stand out. Once it's done right, it's really notable. I think, how do you see it now in B2B? Do you think people are catching up? Like we see it in the last few years. It's, people think B2B and they think boring, but I think there's some companies that are doing some exciting stuff. In your experience, do you see a shift in terms of how B2B companies are thinking about marketing, or do you still see that there's a big gap there between B2B and B2C in that space?
I think there's still a gap. I think it also depends on the audience. So for example, I see a lot of really fun brands that are marketing to me, selling to marketers or selling to sales. For me, the quintessential poster child is Gong. They are a great solution and they're fun. Their Super Bowl ads were a big hit. And when you're selling to sellers and to marketing, we already have a bit more of our BS lens on. And so we want to cut through the BS and we want to really just like get to know who is this for? How is it impacting them? So I see those kind of brands, it's a bit easier to have a bit more fun with that. When you're selling to more conservative audiences or risk-averse industries like financial services, right now Invert, we're in Biopharma, it can be a little bit trickier. However, I think you still need to show that person behind the curtain. And you do that through building credibility, through relationships, your leadership team, your investors, advisors that back you up. But I think we're getting closer to having a bit more fun with brands. It's still a journey. There's still a lot of corporate speak. There's still a lot of just trying, like the corporate blue is just, it's the trust color, Yeah. So I think we're getting there, but there's a time and place as well, I think, depending on the audience.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting with like financial services that you mentioned there. If you look at like the last few years, I think there's definitely a shift in terms of even like earnings, of how they're communicating their earnings. Like before, it would be CNBC or the Bloomberg channels, and it's like an interview. But now I've seen like some CEOs leaning into LinkedIn where they're just sharing like a
Yeah.
quick snapshot of like these are the earnings, this is what it means, these are our focus areas, etc. Whereas a few years ago you would never really imagine that, and the videos are quite informal as well. So I think
For
from
sure.
what I've seen of like kind of comms channels changing for especially for regulated industries, that's an interesting shift.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's shown in the whole like digital transformation journey that a
Yeah,
lot of them are going through. And it's been in some cases a 15, 20-year journey that we've been
yeah,
on, but they're getting on the bandwagon. And I think even like with AI coming up, we talked to certain clients where at one point their IT department said they blocked even like Google search because Google search had AI in it. And so there was this level of aversion, this risk, this caution. And now it's pivoting to crap, we're going to be left behind.
yeah.
We need to get ahead of the curve. And so there is, I think, more of this impulse with the digital transformation and then now with AI to like, okay, we really need to get ahead of this and we need to modernize ourselves.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Maybe you could tell the audience who are unfamiliar with Invert where you are working now. It's bioprocessing, but for people that are not familiar with the sector or with the category, maybe you could just share a little bit more about the company.
Yeah. So I like to describe it to folks who are not from the industry as Tableau for scientists in bioprocessing. So in order to get a life-saving therapy, medicine, vaccines to market, it can be 8, 10 years of development. And that whole timeline is mostly around this whole section called bioprocessing, where you're scaling up production to make sure it's ready for market. During that time, you are doing so many tests and you're working with so much material. There's a lot of data captured from that. The industry has been pretty old school, archaic, where the data is captured in spreadsheets and PDFs. People are copy pasting things, and you have these incredibly intelligent scientists who are essentially data janitors, copy pasting data between spreadsheets. So we're helping digitalize their data, bring it all into one platform so that it's unified and harmonized. And then on top of that, they have the data visualization embedded in the tool. So they're not copy pasting spreadsheets and then going to their BI tool. It's all in one place. It's enterprise ready. We have AI built on top of that so they can start asking questions and getting to answers quicker. So we're helping some of our clients who are developing life-saving therapies for cancer discovery be able to cut their experiments in half to get to results a lot faster. So our goal is to really impact what they call time to milestone in the life sciences industry.
Right, interesting. It's your buying group, so to say, then would that be like kind of research centers, or would it also be like research units within pharma companies, or both?
Yep. Yep. Research and development, and then moving up to biomanufacturing as well.
Right, interesting. Yeah, it's a. I heard an interview there recently with the one of the founders of Anthropic, and they also had I think it was the CEO of Eli, the
Eli
pharma company.
Lilly.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe you heard the interview, but he was talking about how they're really leveraging Anthropic in terms of how they're looking through research papers. They obviously need a human, somebody to review it, but
Yeah.
that just the time saving alone is huge. And now
Yes.
they're thinking like how that'll be kind of go down the line in terms of in a few years in terms of drugs being released.
Yes. It's quite incredible. There's
Yeah,
so much potential to disrupt the word disrupt. There's so much potential to change this industry and improve
yeah.
it and improve. I mean, if we can cut that time of 10 years down to 8,
Yeah.
6, 2, that's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. How does marketing play the role there then? Because I imagine it's very different to say the typical SaaS kind of play of like kind of a subscription service and your
Yes.
the typical thing of like the pain points and stuff like that from a pharma and research industry. When you look at like kind of say the category or even say category entry points in terms of positioning or even around content as well. How do you approach that then for this particular sector?
Yeah. Great question. So, this kind of space, it's very relationship based. So we were wise enough to build a commercial team of folks who come from the industry, who have years, in some cases decades of experience working with the people we want to be with, either in seat or selling to them. So they have these trusts that they've built where they already know what they're talking about and speak the same language as them, and they felt those pains themselves in the lab. And then on top of that, they have pre-built relationships that they fostered over years. So it's very much relationship based. then the role of marketing is to layer on top of that and to enforce the trust. So coming in to Invert, one of the first things I saw was that our website was very features based. It was like this bell and whistle, this bell and whistle, and this bell and whistle. Whereas what you need to do is, especially with a new technology that can be intimidating for this space, it is to bring them along the journey and rebuild that story. What is the narrative? What is your problem? I hear you. I see you. This is your problem. What is our solution? How do we do it? And here's some proof. So it's rebuilding that story arc. So it's a lot of messaging, positioning, going back to basics of like, how do we position our value prop to this market and what problems are we helping them solve? We're leading with that more enterprise executive narrative. So there's a lot of digital transformation there, innovation teams that want to invest in this versus just the like, we help your team save a couple minutes here and there from having to do this. So it's going back to basics of the storytelling. Then on top of that, it's building credibility and trust. So the other ways that we're doing that is through comms and public relations. So we're working with an agency where we're going to be building out different narratives and stories to have that drumbeat of like different customers we've brought on board and tell that story. Partnerships we're building. So building partnerships with others in the industry, showing that we are deeply embedded in the industry. We're not going anywhere. Third way is through advisors. So people who are credible in the space, they're seasoned leaders who might be semi-retired or already retired, who have that credibility and that visibility, and they end up being your advocates for the solution, and they lend that weight behind your brand. And so it's a lot of brand building, a lot of storytelling, and it's a lot of making yourself look 5 times bigger than you actually are, especially in a startup. If we're selling to SMB startups, then it's like, okay, you're the young, hip, cool kid on the block, and it's this fast turnaround. These are long relationships. These are long cycles. This is like get your foot in the door and then build that relationship. You're selling them a vision. You're not saying, buy my software today. You're saying, we want to build a partnership with you over X amount of years. So being in demand gen and enterprise sales motion, I've done a lot around thought leadership, events, and building advisor networks. And coming into Invert, it's now as leading marketing. I'm really taking a step back and also owning the whole brand narrative, storytelling around that, and trying to make us bigger than we are. And then working super closely with sales team on what are the assets, collateral, messaging they need to go to market as well. Slideware, one pagers, et cetera, and then all the events we need to participate in.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the one around advisory boards as well, I think, because especially in the sector where you're in, where I guess trust is like probably one of the key KPIs of how you kind of grow with these enterprise accounts, because nothing happens overnight and it compounds, I guess, over time. But when you look at those advisory boards, then how do you, how does it work normally? Is it something, because in a way, I guess it's like it's a long-term partnership, no?
Yes. And in some cases, it may make sense to do a small 6-month pilot between each other, or maybe a couple years. There's a couple different formats you can explore. So and I think value that advisors can lend to you. So on the one hand, as I mentioned, it's the credibility piece. Like it really lends weight to have the CIO, CTO, CPO, C whatever of X company or former from X company who are backing you, putting them on your website. They are part of our advisory board. They are lending that credibility. There's the other portion where they are really well connected. And part of that connection means that they have a great network. They can provide referrals for you. They are what I call as like almost like business builders for you. They are building that momentum and introducing you to the right people. There's no better sales funnel than like warm introductions, especially from other leaders. And so there's that motivation. And then the last one I'd say is kind of like that thought leadership part. So they are a lot of times going to conferences, they're speaking with all the right people. They are able to have their ear to the market of what is the biggest pain points, what is going on in the market, and they feed that intel back to you. That can change your product roadmap. I could flip it on its head. It has flipped it on its head in an org I've been in. It can feed your discussion topics at an executive dinner you host. It can feed a white paper thought leadership you want to build. So they lend that kind of thought leadership component as well. So building that group you could start small with informal relationships. You can do small proof of concept contracts with them. For business builders, for example, sometimes these folks, they exist, they're out there working with multiple companies, and they just want to open doors and they want to be compensated for opening those doors. And as they should, their Rolodex is very valuable. And so there is sometimes KPIs involved, there's a compensation package involved. For the more long-term thought leadership credibility relationship, that might be more of like they have skin in the game through options, but their also benefit for them is the network that they're a part of.
Yep.
You have other advisors in your group that they get to network with, and they feel good that they're connecting with these people. And then the other I think is important to emphasize is you really need to sell them on the vision. It's not just a commercial relationship and transactional. They need to feel really inspired by what you're trying to achieve and the mission and your vision as a business. And they need to feel proud, because then when you're not in the room, they'll be talking about you,
Yeah.
and they'll be able to tell your story for you when you're not there. The only way they can do that is by knowing your story, your vision, your mission, versus we have this feature, it can do this. If you click this, it does that. That's not what they need to hear. They need to hear the mission and vision. They need to be sold on that, and they need to believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially when you're selling into enterprise. It's much more about like kind of the vision to stand out than just to be
Yeah.
selling based on features.
Yep, 100%. It's all about the long-term partnership. They're taking a risk working with a startup, and one, you need to appear like you're not a startup. You have your shit together, if you will, and you also have that longevity in mind. You're not thinking about the next 6 months. You're thinking about the next 6 years.
Yeah.
And how are you going to take on those relationships? You're building the maturity model for them. So when we go to our clients, we step in with a proof of concept, but then we're also saying, what does the next 3 months look like of a proof of concept? What does a year look like? What does 2 years, 5 years, until we're fully entrenched?
Yeah.
Versus just going in for the kill, like, hey, fork over $5 million. It's like, whoa. So you really need to show that maturity model, and that we
Yeah.
understand your pain points, and we're going to be working with you and hand holding you the entire time.
What do you think in terms of these particular people on advisory boards? Because I imagine they've an area of expertise, and then there are a number of different, whether it's research centers or pharma companies that they work with. But would they also then have like a large presence in terms of an online presence? Are they seen as thought leaders as well in a particular area of expertise? Or is it someone that's like very focused in terms of they're known very well within this industry, or both?
Yeah, great question. So you want to look for a variety, and you want to test out a variety of different mixes. So I've worked with advisors who had 900 connections on LinkedIn, but they were the CTO of a very, very big financial services institution. And they are obviously extremely well connected. Some groups or some advisors we worked with, they're very involved in invite only small communities of other C-level executives. So we don't get to position, it's not a pay per play type of model ever in those kind of communities, but by partnering with them, they get to speak about us in those groups. And then we have other advisors where they might be that LinkedIn presence, that thought leadership presence. They post a lot. They like to storytell a lot themselves. One way of looking at it is like, are they trying to build their personal career, their personal brand on LinkedIn, and they want to be that storytell engine with you? And so you can do video content with them. You can give them some kind of social strategy that you work on together. But you can't blanket the strategy for every single advisor. Every single one is a snowflake, and they are very, very special, as they should, and they should be treated that way as they are, for what value they bring to the table, and then what value you can give to them is very key. So one other way we've approached advisors is pairing them up. You can, depending on their personalities, their career background, sometimes we pair them up and we say, we need your help to enter X account. Can you team up and tag team and strategize how to do that? And it's just been incredible seeing the teamwork that comes out of that, and then how excited they get out of it. And then it just snowballs. And so they come in like, I know this person at the account. I know this person. What if I reach out to this person? We're going to be in this city. Let's have them for dinner. Let's do this. And they nerd out on it. So really also helping them pair up with each other. So I wouldn't say we don't filter based off of their LinkedIn network as much. However, depending if you are using them, especially for the business builder that business builder need, you really need introductions and you believe that they can help you with that. We do go for the pilot program because especially if you're investing capital into that, because you don't know what they can bring until
Yeah.
the proof is in the pudding. So we've seen some advisors who make big promises, but then they can't really make the right introductions. And that's okay. Like, I mean, everyone has a different thing they bring, but it's important to test it out as well before committing to a 2-year long engagement.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of like when you see like as a next step with those advisory boards, what do you find is the most effective then? Like, is it organizing a meeting at a trade show, organizing an event where somebody is speaking at, or like kind of these small events where you have kind of peers, or what do you find is most effective in terms of what you see at the moment for like kind of in-person events?
Yeah. So at my last company at Carrot, what was most successful for us were we co-hosted executive dinners with them. So we had our map of our advisors. Okay, we have X in New York City, in Austin, in San Francisco, in London, in India. We'd say, okay, when do we want to host specific dinners, and who in their network can we ask them to invite? And sometimes we're having an advisor in New York inviting their network who they know in San Francisco. And it's a whole incredible mapping exercise where we have to go through LinkedIn and scrape all of the right titles and locations and the connections between all of our different advisors. It's an incredible web, but we found it more effective to own the strategy, own the discussion than latching onto a pre-existing one.
Yeah.
You need both parallel. Like, we don't necessarily use our advisors for conference opportunities, but on the dinners front, they've been hugely helpful because they also end up being the draw sometimes, where we say we are co-hosting a dinner with the C-level of X company. Isn't that exciting? And we're going to be talking about XYZ, a topic that can be very, maybe something that's a little controversial or spicy. And we find that that's been a very good snowball effect. And then we start adding like, oh, and we also are going to be joined by leaders from XXX company.
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, you would see, let's say hypothetically, that there's an event on in New York or something, and then you, as you know, that most of like many people, whether it's on the advisory board or also your potential partners that you want to work with, will be in town at this event. So you would host a dinner around, whether it's in the evening at one of those evenings, and the advisory team, then you would invite some of your potential partners to that dinner based on the fact that they're going to be already at the event anyway. So it's not like that they're just in town, like they're already there.
So interestingly, we have not found that to be successful.
Right, interesting, yeah.
We actually do our dinners just in isolation.
Okay.
We pick the right time, the right place. However, at Invert, we have been latching on to conferences and where there's going to be a big momentum of people. And what we found successful is doing a happy hour the first night or the night before the conference starts.
Yeah.
It's before people are burnt out, before they're exhausted from standing up all day and talking to people. They just want to run to their hotel room and kick their legs up the night before. And we've seen a huge success with that. Like, tons of folks come. They want to see each other. They have more energy and they're excited. But we usually use happy hours for that. We don't use our advisors. And for those, we really want to lean on the brand experience. What is their experience like? Is it a unique venue? What does it tell you about the company? What kind of banners do we have? Do we have a raffle that we're doing? Welcoming folks on the microphone and standing up on a chair, just like those small details.
Yep.
Introducing people, you already know in advance who's attending. Who do you want to introduce to who else?
Yep.
Those have been really effective when we know there's something happening in a specific city.
Yeah, I've seen that myself with I spent 6 years working in LinkedIn across different verticals, but I think the more senior you go in enterprise, I find the more it's about actually just introducing them to peers than it is about like what the new product is. You know, it's that has a place and a time, but it's more of, you know, this person. And we used to do like a quarterly CMO collective, they used to call it, and it's still running, I think, but it was really effective to just introducing people in a very informal setting, but
Hmm.
there's relationships that are made then, and if you facilitate that, I think it compounds over time. People appreciate that they can be put in touch with people that have similar problems or
Yes.
similar challenges and so on. I think that seems to work across
Yes.
industries.
Yes. And people buy from people. And especially if we talk about like categories and category creation, if you are an existing category where they need to buy a CRM, you're competing against Salesforce, you're the cheaper, smarter, whatever version,
Yeah,
there's already an RFP, there's already a budget line item usually for you. If you're building a new category, there isn't, and sometimes I call it like they have a pebble in their shoe that they've just
yeah,
lived with and they don't even know there's a solution out there,
yeah,
then you are you're not the software that they come to. You're not looking for your software. You are the person that they're going to come to and trust. So that's even more reason when you're building a category, you need to put your people first over the software, over
yeah,
the just screenshots of your product. And just it's so much more people and human to human led for them. Like
yeah.
networking and introducing them to other people. Do they like you? Are you likable? So I think the human to human is so critical, and especially when it's a new category you're building.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I'd love to talk to you around that in terms of like kind of go to market of what you see of like kind of the challenges in terms of the short term and the long term in terms of like kind of demand gen and building a brand. Like, how do you find that you get that balance right in terms of managing the short term expectations versus building out something that like obviously has a longer term impact, especially with enterprise? It's always a
Yeah.
challenge, I imagine.
Yeah, totally. It is a lot of like they're long cycles. And the key is you need to be close to the data. So make sure that both you and your sales leadership, you are very close to the data of like how long are the cycles taking, how much do we have in the pipeline, and see what you can do to influence those two KPIs, like the conversion, the volume, and then also the time, especially an enterprise sales cycle. The other piece to it, I think, is you do need to invest, especially early, in a lot of those brand pieces. Because if you do it too late, then it's going to take time. So
Yeah.
you're going to already eat into time. Doing those early, like I started working on messaging and positioning like a week before I started at Invert, because it's something so important to start very, very early. While you're building the volume and the momentum, there's things you can do to start building that kind of the funnel. And I think the most important channel is really through events. Everyone is very excited about face to face right now. So we've been doing that through sponsored conferences. You just need to be there. If you're not there, you don't exist in a lot of cases. So it is a little bit of a pay to play, but that is the place to be seen in a lot of cases. Even just sending delegates, people who are great networkers or friendly faces, sending delegates to places. So being ever present where there already are. The second piece is hosting your
Yeah.
own events, your dinners, your happy hours. We're starting to build a momentum of webinars and doing some virtual stuff. So just building that volume. Then you start getting more people, more names, more contacts in the funnel that you can continuously, you can build that relationship with. I think when it comes to like a traditional funnel or maybe even like old school way, even in a shorter sales cycle, it's very digital first. It's very like, what can we do with like ad spend across different channels? How do we get the conversion on the website better and
Yeah.
optimize this and that? It's definitely not the play anymore. I steer completely away from email marketing.
Yeah.
Email marketing to me is like a no go, especially for enterprise. It's so harmful. One spam email, or if you send one email to like 10 people from the same enterprise account, and you mess up the opportunity for your sales team. You're blocked. The emails that they do get in front of them, or they get a LinkedIn content, they say, I sent you the calendar invite. It doesn't show up for them. That's marketing's fault because we sent
Yeah.
some emails. And so I steer very far away from email marketing. I don't bother with that unless they've opted in to receive our information. We stay far away from that unless or if we're doing a nurture program of contacts we already have. But it's very much that person to person. So events is like number one strategy, I think, to build that momentum like in the short term.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because I think there's like this kind of trail of thought at the moment with people that are, there's a ton of tools with AI and automation and everything. And that's probably good for certain levels of scale. But I think there's a big risk there as well. If you get that
Yes.
wrong, that you can burn certain accounts, and it can eat into your brand equity as well.
Yeah.
But obviously the vendors and stuff won't really tell you that. It's more like you can automate everything and you can enrich
Yes.
lead lists and so on. But I think there's
Yes.
another side to it that, especially in enterprise, it's really where the relationships are key. And if you're just putting them into an automation sequence, nobody wants to feel like they're part of something like that. And I don't
Totally.
think they buy through that either.
100%. And I think there is a case sometimes when, depending if you're going through, if you're doing a top down versus bottoms up sales motion. So we try to do very top down. We know a lot of decisions at these large enterprises happen from the top down. It's very rare it's going to happen bottoms up. There is some where if the team is small, maybe it's a big company, but the team who's going to buy your solution is very small, and there's a lot of ICs at the bottom who are using your solution, then it can possibly make sense to go bottoms up, where
Yep.
you're trying to get their attention to voice the need and be enough a nuisance to leadership to buy your solution. For that, for example, we do a bit of email marketing. We have SDR motion. We do like growth hacky type of campaigns and more fun gimmicky stuff. But I think mostly for that enterprise sale, it really has to come top down,
Yep.
and those bigger relationships and it's really hard to gain trust and it's really easy to lose it. So
Yep.
building that credibility early and very thoughtfully is so, so key.
Definitely. What's, in your opinion, a key channel for that in terms of, the companies that you want to work with or the organizations, but when you look across the different channels that are at play now, what are the key ones that you look at, whether it's communities, small niche communities or larger channels as well?
I'd say it's the advisor group, building an advisor group, and I see it as almost like a referral channel. I'd say then also your sales team, making sure you're building a sales team that also has that Rolodex, that referral channel. And then I'd say finding the communities at that level. Sometimes those communities are very small, invite only, 100-person
Yeah.
groups, not Slack channels. So it's really hard to find those. But if you find those, find the right way to get in them. And maybe you get in them via your advisor
Yeah.
or via an investor or a partner that you have. Partnerships is another one. Find the like players that you play well with, that you have a similar audience that can also back credibility and you can share and co-market together. And then lastly are those big events that you can participate in and making sure you have a speaking engagement where you're visible and you're telling your story. We are testing out demand gen and background also in digital marketing. Display ads have never been something I'm very into. However, as part of the brand building, I do think like even though we're not expecting leads from this, I do think having that kind of ever presence everywhere and doing some display on the publications and the high caliber publications that our audience reads is really important. We're very lucky with one of our investors. We have a license with Tegas, so we're doing a lot of research around what publications do they read, what groups are they a part of, what conferences do they go to, how do they educate themselves in the space. So finding those niche publications and doing display to just be like, hey, you are credible by association could be helpful as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think once you get into certain sectors and certain categories, you realize that there's a whole different type of communities and groups that have very active presence, and they're like, once you discover what they are, can be, the audience may not be huge, but it can be really like heavy hitters within that sector. So it's, and every one of those kind of subcategories, they have a different way of operating, I think, as well. I spoke to someone in cybersecurity recently. They were saying how it's much more about education. Like if you go in and you try to sell, like heavy sell, it doesn't work. It's much more about education and so on. So I think every category has a kind of a different dynamic. Once you know what the communities are, you get a better understanding of how they operate as well.
Yes, 100%. Another thing we're trying out is we're part of, there's sometimes like membership forums that you can participate in. And that also just lends credibility. You're networking with the right people and you are bringing thought leadership. You're not talking about product, but you are participating in niche forums and you're networking with the right people. So yeah, it's so much credibility and it's really much a quality game over quantity.
Yeah, definitely.
It's tough when you see like deals take long time, conversion can be a little tough, but that's where you need to be maniacal about like where deals are dropping off in your funnel so that you could say, okay, we need to make this one tweak, because you're not going to get a top of funnel like 500 deals. And when you're a very niche enterprise space, it's a smaller TAM with a lot of potential
Yeah.
of deal growth. So you really need to treat each deal like maniacally detailed. It
Yeah.
just needs to be down to the T, and it's all about quality over quantity.
Definitely. Any predictions then for the future in the space? Where do you see it evolving with how B2B is now, like with the explosion of different tools and AI and that space? How do you see the industry for marketers evolving over the next, say, 6 to 18 months?
I think content is going to come back, and like good content. I think AI is helping us operationalize things, become faster and validate, but I don't think it should be the first pen to paper. So I think quality, authentic content is going to come back. And multimedia is a big thing that's going to be the star of the show. Video content, conversations, and just like authenticity is going to be really, really important. And just going back to like good old relationships,
Yeah.
as I mentioned, like the dinners, the advisors, the introductions, the referrals, the networking is going to be super, super key. People are still moving out of the virtual world, and that face to face is going to be so important, building trust between all of the different stakeholders involved.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Veronica, thanks very much for joining us on the show today. If anyone wants to find out more about Invert, about content you share, where are you most active?
So our website is invertbio.com, and you can find us on LinkedIn. We're always
Great.
posting and engaging with folks there.
Perfect. We'll put the details on the show notes as well. Thanks
you.
again for joining us on the show, Veronica. It was
Thanks
great
for
chatting
having
with you.
me. Likewise, Marcus.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.